I found Bradley Servis, this guy right here above me, while looking for a connection between the Flora fires that killed 4 young girls in a case of arson and the Delphi double homicide of 2 teens, both in Indiana. I used the McDonald triad, searching for clues hidden in local crimes I deem gateway crimes. The McDonald triad refers to the idea that there are 3 signs that can indicate whether someone will grow up to be a serial killer or some kind of violent criminal. Being cruel or abusive to animals, especially pets, setting fire to objects, or otherwise committing acts of arson, regularly wetting the bed, I believe after the age of 12 specifically. All these things can happen naturally without indicating someone's going to become a violent offender, but one thing we have learned from previous serial killers and violent offenders is that they all pretty much had these things in common. I could not find a connection to the 2 cases, Flora and Delphi, other than of course the name John Weaver, which could be 2 separate Johns, and that's just a whole rabbit hole in itself. I did, however, find Bradley Servis, who seems to fit the profile for the Delphi murders, and it couldn't hurt to take a closer look at this piece of shit.
In our Crime Watch, a local criminal makes a shocking attempt to get revenge on the neighbor who put him in jail. Fox Champagne's Jacqueline Francis joins us in the studio tonight with the story. Jacqueline, you say he's been accused of trying to hire a hitman?
Brianna, that's right. 23-year-old Bradley Servis was already behind bars for allegedly committing hate crimes against an elderly neighbor when police say he tried to hire a hitman to have that neighbor killed. A disturbing turn of events that has Servis facing more serious charges than ever before. Behind bars, but still causing trouble. 23-year-old Bradley Servis of Danville has been locked up at the Vermilion County Jail since last October. State's Attorney Jacqueline Lacey says Servis was arrested after committing a series of hate crimes against an elderly neighbor, allegedly writing racial slurs on her car, damaging property, and lighting her garage on fire. While awaiting trial on these charges, police say Servis tried to hire a hitman to have his neighbor murdered, the same neighbor who's the alleged victim of those hate crimes. A Vermilion County Sheriff's investigator caught on to his plot, which is when authorities brought in an undercover agent from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Officials say they have audio recordings of Servis making a deal with the undercover agent to kill the elderly neighbor for an amount of money. Servis has a prior criminal record that includes a felony charge of aggravated battery. Today, we've gotten a number of viewer concerns into our newsroom asking if Servis had worked as a firefighter for local departments. Both the Village of Tilton and the Lynch Area Fire Protection District tell me Servis was never employed by their agencies, even though his Facebook page may say otherwise. The Lynch Area Fire Chief believes Servis has a history of impersonating law enforcement. Reporting in studio, Jacqueline Francis, Fox Champagne News at 9.
Thank you, Jacqueline. The
Danville man waiting for his trial is now charged with something else, murder for hire. Good evening. I'm Jessica Coons in for Paul and Jennifer tonight. 23-year-old Bradley Servis is accused of trying to hire someone to murder a woman in his other pending case. WCIA 3's Caitlin Connolly is in our newsroom with more details. So, Caitlin, how did police find this out?
They say he made an agreement with an undercover agent from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Servis was attempting to find someone to murder a woman for him while he's awaiting trial in Vermilion County. The woman's involved in a hate crime he's charged with. Now, that crime happened last summer. He was also charged with arson and criminal damage to property. The state's attorney told me they have phone recordings of a conversation that happened in the public safety building. Servis made an agreement with an undercover ATF officer and a third person they're not disclosing right now. The conversation talks about arranging for the woman to be killed for a certain amount of money. Servis is being held on $1.5 million. He's now facing an additional 40 years in prison for his new charges. Live in the newsroom, Caitlin Connolly, WCIA 3.
Should have shut his mouth. He should have never said anything like that. But that's the way he is.
A man in Danville is charged with trying to hire someone to kill his neighbor, and the suspect's father says he might know why. Good evening, I'm Paul Cicchini.
And I'm Jennifer Roscoe. We told you Tuesday, 23-year-old Bradley Servis is charged with murder for hire. He was already in jail for charges of arson, property damage, and a hate crime against his neighbor. Investigators say they caught him trying to put a hit out on her while he was behind bars. But Servis's father says there is more to the story. WCIA3's Aaron Eads has that.
This quiet Danville neighborhood doesn't seem like the kind of place where you'd find arson, hate crimes, and murder for hire. But investigators say that's exactly what happened between the man who lived here and his next-door neighbor. Bradley Servis and his wife Jennifer are both in jail, accused of writing threats on their neighbor's car, damaging it 8 separate times, and setting fire to her garage. Now, the state's attorney says they have jail phone recordings of Bradley Servis trying to hire someone to kill that neighbor for money. Servis didn't know he was talking to an undercover federal agent. I went to see if anyone was still living at the house the couple called home. Can I talk to you about him? Bradley's father, Ralph Servis, answered the door.
If he did anything like that, he's got to pay for it.
Servis says his son used to get along great with their neighbor.
She is a real nice lady. He is bipolar, ADHD, and a couple other things. He's not on the right medicine yet.
After the couple lost their kids, Ralph Servis says his son's wife blamed the neighbor for turning them into DCFS, a claim Ralph insists isn't true.
She started one day out here using the N-word, saying me and my husband and his dad don't like N's. And I come off on her. I said, you keep it up and you can get your rear end out of this house.
Servis says getting his son on the right medication was a struggle in the past. Now he's questioning whether he's getting what he needs while in jail.
So I don't know what's going to happen.
What do you hope happens?
Well, he's got to pay if he's done anything bad. He's got to pay for it. I'm not lying about that.
In Danville, Aaron Eads, WCIA3, your local news leader.
Servis is being held on a $1.5 million bond. He's now facing an additional 40 years in prison. And we looked into Servis's background his background on Facebook. He claims to be a firefighter for the Lynch Fire Protection District and the Tilton Fire Department. His profile shows pictures of him in uniform. Both departments told us they've never hired Servis. The Lynch chief says he's seen his claims on Facebook and they're not true.